All right, so there is movement this morning. Let me read to you the very latest. This is from Jake Sherman over at Punchbowl, who posts up and always gets comments from McCarthy, et cetera. So he says, we don't have an element from this because it's just breaking this morning. Republicans feel very good about a deal to lift the debt limit. Ours expect the compromise will come together sometime in the next few days. Intense pressure to wrap negotiations up as soon as possible in order to get a bill through in timely fashion. We anticipate the debt limit will be extended through 2024 as part of any agreement. And the GOP leadership feels as if they will be able to win the support of the majority of the House Republican Conference for this eventual package. Every negotiation needs its caveat. It could all fall apart, but we were getting very positive signals from the leadership until late last night. Also want to lay down a marker once again and tell you the anger in the House Dem caucus right now is palpable. Many rank-and-file Democrats feel as if they're going to be asked to vote for a package that is slanted toward GOP demands with little for them in return. Biden is going to have to work hard to get this thing through, and it's a real test for Hakeem Jeffries and Catherine Clark. Let's say, for argument's sake, that the agreement comes together tonight. It will still take roughly 2 days to convert any agreement into legislative text. And you've got in there that 72-hour review of the bill that Republicans forced through as part of their speaker negotiations. So happy talk from Republicans last night about we may be coming to a potential deal. I will just put in there, as always, that I'm skeptical until I actually see it come together, because I do think you have problems in the Republican caucus with the hardliners. I think you have big problems in the Democratic caucus with people who don't want to vote for work requirements, who have drawn some red lines, who don't want to vote for, stripping tax credits in the Inflation Reduction Act. So this is a long way from being over, continues to be my assessment.
I agree. So I here, let's say the positive side, which is we appear to be coming closer to a deal. Now, here's the problem. Even once we have said deals, we've always warned about, we have defections, not only in the House. I don't know why they're only talking about the House. There's also this chamber called the Senate, where you would have to have
I've heard of those guys.
Democrats sign on to it, or at least some Democrats who sign on, because, this guy named Chuck Schumer is actually the one who has to bring it to the floor. So if he doesn't support it, or if a huge portion of his caucus doesn't support it, then how exactly is he supposed to do that? There's that piece. But let's focus on the House. Already, there's a sizable portion of Republicans in the House who are not going to vote for this. They don't want to vote for a deal, period.
Yeah.
And in fact, they want Democrats to have to come over the top and go ahead and vote for this thing. So there's that. Now, also, as you have pointed out, the AOC, Jayapal, and all those people, they are going to be furious about this, and I'm probably going to try and do everything possibly they can to
and not just them, the Congressional Black Caucus also very upset about the work requirements and those sorts of things. And it's not just like the squad and squad adjacent members. It's like the entire Progressive Caucus, which aren't even really that progressive, and there's 100 of them.
I was going to say that's about 100 members, if I recall. So, so you've already, I wouldn't say ruled that out, but it's going to be tough. Now, what are the spending cuts going to be? And this is also where the big question is. Not only do they have to have nominal cuts, they also want to increase military spending. Then they also don't want to touch of discretionary spending. They don't want to touch veterans benefits, which is a huge portion. Ryan and I talked a lot about this. We're really talking about like 1% to 2% of the entire federal budget, which is on the table here, because we also refuse to raise any taxes. And that one really pisses me off, because I'm like, look, guys, even if we agree on spending and all this, you've got the carried interest loophole, prescription, give us something. Just because on merits, that's a great way to raise money. There's no reason why Medicare, the largest drug purchaser in the United States, should not be negotiating drug prices on all drugs. There's literally no, if that is one of those where put your business hat on. Should a business be legally required not to negotiate? You can't do that. That's insane, except that the government here is the business. So that's one that actually could save a ton of money. Carried interest loophole. We actually have no idea how much money that one would save. And then same whenever it comes to pharmacy benefit managers. I mean, these people print billions off of, not just us, they're printing billions off of your grandmother.
And this is
that's why they are scum.
Useless middlemen.
Oh yeah,
is all that they are.
They
cut.
really are going after people like your parents, or my parents, like older folks, people who are on Medicare and who have private plans too, who are hitting caps that never should be in the first place. So everyone agrees that those people don't deserve to exist. Everyone agrees these things are way, way too expensive. So that is where I just wish they would cave, but they just refuse to do it. On the messaging front, I'm curious what you think, because recent polls have come out which actually say a lot of people do agree with the GOP position. Here's a fascinating one that actually just broke this morning, Krystal, which is that the amount of people who say that they would blame Republicans is about 45%. The amount of people who say that they would blame Biden is 47%. You're basically looking at an equal split, which is a disaster for Biden.
Yes.
Because in 2011, Obama had a 15-point lead on the debt ceiling fight and on the government shutdown. When Boehner shut down the government, Boehner lost. I don't think people remember that.
Yeah.
Boehner took the blame, and the Republicans did. They even called it like the Boehner shutdown, if I recall. This time around, with negative partisanship and all of that, it's a wash. If you're a Republican, you are not blaming Republicans. If you are a Democrat, you are not blaming Biden. So it's one of those where that only gives even more heft. There is no political incentive for the Republicans now to negotiate at all. Matt Gaetz even said this. He's like, why would we negotiate with a hostage?
Yeah,
which I was like, hey,
admitted that they're hostage takers. Yeah. No, that's.
I mean, at least he's honest. I always prefer honesty.
That's exactly right. I mean, the difference is Obama, for his many faults, was a very effective communicator. Biden, and they're not even saying anything. I mean, they're not even laying out their case. It's a muddled disaster. And it's not just me that's saying that. The Democratic, like normie elected Democrats who are super pro-Biden are extremely frustrated with the lack of messaging. So he's lost the messaging battle. The strategic, to the extent that there was a strategy, has been a complete disaster, has handed Republicans 100% of the leverage, where the only metric is like now how badly do Democrats lose out in the final negotiations. It's just a catastrophe for Democrats all the way around, and an avoidable one also that they could have gotten rid of through reconciliation when they had power. And also, even if they failed on that front, the lack of a coherent plan, messaging strategy, and the willingness to take off the table immediately any of the workarounds, that, again, it just handed Republicans all of the leverage. It has been a worst of all worlds in terms of their approach. And I think for them, it really is a catastrophe. The fact that opinion is divided on whose fault it is such a failure. And then I also think, to your point about some of the polling, and the polling's been kind of mixed because there was other polling that showed that a majority of people want a clean debt ceiling increase. I think it partly depends.
Most people don't know what the goddamn debt
Right, and it partly depends on how it's asked, et cetera. But also, Biden has basically caved to the Republican messaging that we have a debt problem, that we need to cut spending, when, again, in the markets, there's no evidence that that's the case. So, of course, when you have both the Democrats and the Republicans basically saying, oh, yeah, we have an issue, we need to cut spending, then you're going to have a majority of Americans who are like, I guess we need to cut spending, because everybody is saying that that is the case. Going back to the math that's needed here, put this Politico piece up on the screen. Biden is increasingly expecting that they're going to need a significant number of Democrats, probably around 100, to actually vote for the eventual deal, because you have Republican hardliners who will never accept any sort of compromise on this. And so he's trying to figure out, all right, where am I going to get 100 Democratic votes for? What kind of a deal could we come together and get a majority of Republicans to vote along with 100 Democrats? I will say, for all the protestations from Jayapal and the Congressional Black Caucus and everybody else, we've been to this show before, and usually these people ultimately, when Biden comes to them, is like, I really need you to do this, they're like, all right, fine, I'll vote for it. So do I expect them to have a backbone in the situation? We have seen very little evidence of said backbone previously. Don't have a lot of confidence there.
Yes.
We also, just to show you how tenuous and back and forth these deals are and the negotiations are, put this next piece up. This was Jake Sherman, had a quote yesterday from one of the key negotiators, Patrick McHenry, who said, I understand the deadline. I'm not yet an optimist on getting this resolved. We are, in my view, past what is a responsible deadline. And that was why when the speaker said, let's figure out in February, he meant it. So that's like the polar opposite of what they're saying this morning. Yesterday, they're like, I think it's over, we're going to default. This morning, they're like, oh, we're super happy, there might be a deal. So we can have a lot more roller coasters between now and however this gets resolved. Last piece that we have for you here is Bernie Sanders actually wrote an op-ed for FoxNews.com, which I think he's penned a couple of Fox News op-eds at this point, which is interesting in and of itself. He's making his case still for why the president should go the 14th Amendment route. Put this up on the screen. His headline is, Biden must resist Republican debt ceiling demands. Here's what he needs to do instead. The key lines here, he says, so where do we go from here? In my view, there's only one option. President Biden has the authority and responsibility under the 14th Amendment of the Constitution to avoid a default. The language in that amendment is quite clear. It says the validity of the public debt of the United States shall not be questioned. This is a constitutional guarantee the U.S. will always pay its debts, period. This is not a radical idea. And then he goes on to say, back in 2016, then President Trump was correct when he said, quote, this is the United States government. First of all, you never have to default because you print the money. So Bernie and others still pushing 14th Amendment. Biden team hasn't totally taken it off the table, but they've really repeatedly poured cold water on it. They clearly prefer to try to negotiate some type of a deal here and try to deal with it that way because Biden is, you know, the consummate institutionalist. He doesn't want to try out anything novel or different than what's been done in the past. So that's where we are effectively.
There we are. It does look very likely that a deal will happen. And it's like you said, people will complain, but the Dems are going to vote for it. In my opinion, I think they're all just going to vote for it. The real question is how many Republicans will actually vote for the deal. But if they can come through with something by the end of the day, I mean, the markets seem to be like yesterday, things were not great. There
was a crash yesterday on news that they were far apart and it wasn't going well.
It looks like, so we're down by 1% just over the past 5 days. I mean, that's not terrible. So we still haven't seen a major market reaction. We'll see how it goes. I do think the biggest forcing mechanism for a deal would be if they say there's a deal and it falls apart. Then the markets will crash. And then you'll have to start seeing some real compromise there. And then possibly we'll see something increase from that period. That would be the biggest forcing mechanism. But until then, we'll see. We remain
We're
skeptical.
all in their hands, and it is not a good feeling.
That's right.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Saagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.